So today we're going to take a close look at the two contenders, yes only two because British politics and the system is a bit messed up, at the two main contenders for the role of Prime Minister at the next general election. Now US viewers, don't worry, don't switch off. A, it's going to be informative and entertaining, but also B, I'm going to compare the same or do the same comparison next week, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I'm going to look into their backgrounds, I'm going to look at their headline policies and how they're going to fund them, but most importantly, I'm going to look at the impact of the people of Britain. So sit back, strap in, let's get to it. So here he is, Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak was born on the 12th of May 1980 in Southampton in England. He's a British politician and he's been serving as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom since October 2022, when he got his arse handed to him by Liz Truss, and that was a disaster. He's a member of the Conservative Party and has held various positions within the government, including Chancellor of the Exchequer, and I have to admit, I think he did a pretty good job during COVID, where he was the orchestrator of the furlough scheme and kept a lot of people A, in work, and B, solvent throughout that crazy period. And he's also been the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Sunak's background is in finance. Having worked for Goldman Sachs and as a hedge fund manager before entering politics, he's known for his pro-business stance, and his focus is absolutely on economic growth. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, born September 2nd, 1962 in London, England, is a British politician and former lawyer. He's the leader of the Labour Party and has been a Member of Parliament for Holborn and St Pancras since 2015. Starmer's background in law, having worked as a barrister and as the Director for Public Prosecutions and the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, is known for his focus on social justice and his desire to build a fairer society. So the headline policies for Rishi Sunak. Number one, economic growth. Comes as no surprise, it's the Conservative Party after all. Rishi Sunak's main focus is on stimulating economic growth through tax cuts and deregulation. He believes that this will lead to increased investment and job creation and higher wages. Number two, immigration. We've been around this boy several times. In fact, it's been a political hot potato for some time. But Sunak has promised to take a tough stance on immigration, with plans to introduce a points-based system and limit the number of migrants on entering the country. Military spending. Sunak again has pledged to increase military spending to ensure that the UK is able to defend itself and its allies, meeting that all-important crucial 2.5% of GDP. Now, it's one thing having these policies, it's quite another thing funding these policies. So for Sunak, he intends to introduce national service. It's a £1 billion pledge to introduce national service schemes for young people. Now, it's not about joining the military, it's about a national service in all services. That could be the military, medical, the NHS, policing, fire, anything that contributes to society as a whole. We also have the Triple Lock Plus, which is a £2.4 billion pledge to increase state pensions annually by the highest of the either inflation, average earnings growth, or 2.5%. Definitely a vote winner for those who are in receipt of a state pension or soon to be in receipt of a state pension. You've got the New Towns Pledge, which is a £60 million pledge to build 10 new towns across the UK. I've got opinions on that. I mean, £60 million is chicken feed, but there we go. And then we also have a child benefit shake-up, a £1.3 billion pledge to reform child benefits to support families with children. Funding these policies is part of a £6 billion tax clampdown, which includes measures to tackle tax avoidance and evasion. This funding is intended to cover the cost of these pledges and leave room for further announcements. Additionally, the Conservative Party has announced plans to increase the military spending budget to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade, which is expected to cost billions of pounds. The funding for this increase is not explicitly mentioned, but it's likely to come from a combination of increased government revenue and budget reallocations. Some government departments, you can expect some cuts coming soon. It's worth noting that these funding sources and estimates are subject to change, of course. Look, it's UK politics and may be influenced by various factors, including economic conditions and government priorities. And you can probably stick conflict in there as well, because it's always a get out of the jail free card for governments. Keir Starmer's policies, on the other hand, are social justice. Starmer's main focus is on creating a fairer society with policies aimed at reducing inequality and improving public services. A Green New Deal. Starmer has proposed a Green New Deal which would invest in renewable energy and create green jobs to help the UK transition to a low carbon economy. And then finally, the NHS investment. Starmer has promised to increase funding for the National Health Service to ensure that it's able to provide high quality healthcare for all. Now, we know that you've pledged these policies, Keir, but how exactly are you going to fund them? So he intends to fund via these means. Economic stability. Labour plans to introduce a new economic plan that focuses on stability and growth with a focus on fiscal responsibility. Don't forget, Labour are unproven in this area. They've not been in government for a long time, since Tony Blair in fact. So there's a real roll the dice moment for the UK population as to whether or not they believe that Labour can be economically responsible, fiscally responsible with public purse. NHS waiting times. Labour pledges to cut NHS waiting times by increasing funding to the NHS. This includes recruiting more doctors and nurses. On immigration, Labour plans to set up a new border security command to tackle illegal immigration and ensure that the UK's borders are secure. For British Energy, Labour is going to create a new publicly owned energy company called Great British Energy, and this will harness clean British power to keep energy bills down for good. And education, Labour is going to recruit 6,500 new teachers and put mental health counsellors in every secondary school funded by tax on private schools. Now, funding these policies is expected to come from a combination of tax increases, yes, and savings from other areas of government spending. Labour hasn't provided specific details on the exact funding sources for each of these policies, but the party has committed to fiscal responsibility and ensuring that its plans are fully costed. So now we know who they are, we know their headline policies, and we know how they think they're going to fund those policies. But what about the impact on the people of Britain? What does this mean for you? There's no doubt that the outcome of this election is going to have a massive impact. I don't think there's ever been a time where they've been more polarised in the two parties. If Rishi Sunak wins, you can absolutely expect to see a focus on economic growth, given his background, A, in both the business sector whilst he worked at Goldman Sachs, but B, we've already seen it when he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer in a former role. This has potential benefits for business owners and high earners. The Conservatives have always been pro-wealth. However, there are absolutely concerns about the impact on his policy on immigration and the economy and wider society. How is that going to affect the working man or woman, working person? If Keir Starmer wins, you can absolutely expect to see a focus on social justice, with policies aimed at reducing inequality and increasing fairness amongst all. It could lead to a fairer society, but there are some concerns as to whether or not the Labour Party has the ability to be fiscally responsible with our money, the public money. Can it grow the economy? After all, we're in some serious debt. The battle for Britain for both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer is a crucial one. And as I've just said, the outcome is going to have a significant impact on the entire country. Don't forget, we're over £2.6 trillion in debt. I don't know who to, but we're in debt to someone of that amount. That's 96% of our GDP. Now, whether or not you're a supporter of the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, it's important that you stay informed, stay engaged, and more important than ever, make sure you cast your vote. We need to step in the right direction, and your vote is crucial.